So Neil, you've been an advisor to successive Lib Dem leaders. You're probably slightly surprised to find yourself as advisor to a Lib Dem Deputy Prime Minister, but what do you think the three absolute priorities are for the Lib Dems as we look at them today?
Well, the first one is to be part of a successful government, implementing Liberal policies at the heart of that government and ensuring that the economy turns round from the deep deficit that we've inherited to being a more balanced, more decentralised, more sustainable economy. Those are the three clear and key principles that I think underline the Liberal Democrats' input into this government.
And do you think we're on track? You were referring earlier to the need to show coalition politics work to, in essence, make the case for new politics. Do you think that that the experience of 5 months of coalition so far is showing that coalition politics works? What are the big deliverables so far?
My many German friends say to me that people used to say if you want to see a successful coalition government, you go to Germany. Now you come to Britain.
You're saying that this is that there's sort of people at the moment who are having a sort of bit of racked with uncertainty about the coalition within the party, looking for, and maybe actually if the AV referendum is lost next year, that will be a further moment of uncertainty. How do you think the Lib Dem need to react if the AV referendum is lost?
I think you would react the same way as if the AV referendum is won, that the key insight that Nick Clegg and David Cameron have drawn from previous governments is you have to be radical and you have to do it early. And that's why there's been a raft of reforms on public services, on the economy and on the constitution already announced and coming in. And therefore post an AV referendum, whether it's won or whether it's lost, and I think it will be won, it's important to use the momentum out of that referendum to further push forward other constitutional reforms. For example, the long overdue elections to the House of Lords and indeed the long overdue electoral reform for local government, which is going to be increasingly important as we decentralise more power and therefore needs to be representative of the people who vote in local elections.
And finally, the Lib Dems have been subjected to probably rather a lot more media exposure than the party had been used to over the previous perhaps 80 years or so since it last left government. How worried need the Lib Dems be about the extent to which they receive quite a critical press from the mainstream media?
Well, actually, the sections of the press that used to be very favourable to the Liberal Democrats are the most hostile. The sections of the press that used to ignore the Liberal Democrats and when they covered them they were hostile, which is the vast bulk of the press, actually are now a lot more favourable. So we're getting the somewhat contrarian sense that the Guardian and the Independent are being quite negative about the Liberal Democrats in government, where the Telegraph and the Times and the Sun are being quite pro-Lib Dem involvement in government. And of course, interestingly for the Lib Dems, the massed sellers are now being more positive and the rather smaller papers are being negative. So I think the extra exposure over time, once people get what the Lib Dem involvement in government is all about, will be a very positive thing for the party.
So being down nearer 10% than over 20% in the polls, not an immediate cause for concern?
Well, the polls this week had 15-16. The general election is not due until 2015. The Liberal Democrats in the last 3 years have varied between 11 and 31. So actually there's a lot of upside once people see the country coming through the economic difficulties, and the Lib Dems will get the benefit from that and from the many Liberal policies that the government has introduced.
Neil Sherlock, thank you very much.